Hey, World of Procurement. I'm Daniel. I'm the founder of World of Procurement. And today on the Procurement Legends podcast, I have someone that I've been actually following for a long time in the space. His name is Sagi. He is the co-founder and CEO of Tonkean. And he's going to be joining us and talking all about process orchestration and intake orchestration, two topics that, to be honest, I'm massively bullish on. So just a little bit about Tonkean here, because they've been around for a while. They're now focused on this challenge. And I would say that they are at the forefront. They are innovating and leading when it comes to process orchestration and intake orchestration. And that's a big deal because this whole area is, I would say, booming right now in the procurement tech space, but also for you as practitioners, if you're trying to figure out how you're going to go digital, how to change your digital setup, how you're going to get people across the business to start using your processes to engage with you earlier. This is the podcast you need to be watching, my friends. So sit back, relax, enjoy it. I mean, if you're driving and listening to this, maybe don't get so chilled out, and enjoy this conversation that I have with Sagi.
I wanted to ask you, what is process orchestration and why is it something that procurement teams need to be aware of and then invest in it?
Well, funny enough, the process orchestration is something that I think caught up a lot of attention recently. But I've been working on this problem for almost 10 years now. And if I go back to why I even started working on it, I think that kind of explained process orchestration. So the really incarnation of my company, Tonkean, is that processes are not about data, they're about people. But software, and enterprise software in particular, is largely about data. And so there's a disconnect there. So process orchestration is really the idea of you need something to help you orchestrate, shepherd, almost like puppet master the process to fit to what people the way the people work. And I think when you think about procurement and why it's so important for procurement is because it's such a centric type of team that everything they do touches a lot of different stakeholders. And so when you think about different teams, different stakeholders, different responsibilities, different priorities, they also live in different technologies and different tools. And that creates a siloed, unaligned experience that requires an extra work just to coordinate and just to kind of bring together. And this is really where process orchestration comes about, is to take that process and align it not only from the systems, that will just be an integration problem, but from the people and the different times in which they need to come in and different reasons that they need to come in and be part of that process.
Yeah, I've experienced a lot of those silos over the years, right? And ridiculous disparity between solutions and people all over the business. So I'm super bullish, by the way, on process orchestration for that reason. And then there's like this other element, right? And it's intake orchestration. I was hoping you could probably, if you could delve into that and just explain that. I think a lot of people, they kind of get the process orchestration bit, although it's still new to a lot of people, but intake seems to be something that I still find people struggling to grapple with.
So if you think about it, they are very connected, but they're almost like a subset. So a way to think about it is that intake orchestration is really a subset of process orchestration, because intake is a subset of a process. So if you think about a process, it's any really, sequence of activity that needs to happen in order to accomplish a certain goal. Intake is a version of processes that are usually between two parties, or always between two parties, usually between two teams. So if you have one team that needs to request things from a different team, or need help from a different team, or need to hand off something to a different team, that second team is experiencing intake. Because they need to basically collect that information from the first team in order to do their job. And so, and that does not only exist in procurement, right? When you send something to the legal team is intaking your request. When even sales, close a deal and hand off it to the customer success team, the customer success is doing an intake from the sales team. But procurement, then I think, especially when you think about everything around purchasing, but also about new suppliers and in other things. But this is where procurement is essentially starting their entire work only when someone else from the company comes and say, hey, I need to purchase something, or hey, I need to source something, or I need to onboard new supplier. That is why intake become a very obvious place to describe the majority of the processes for procurement. But this is an important distinction, that this is really just a way to describe that version of a business process. The business process that is, two parties moving work from one to another.
Yeah, absolutely. And you would have seen this with a lot of your customers when they've taken on board Tonkean as a solution. That intake across procurement is often email, in person, like a request. It's so scattered. I've always wondered, like, how on earth do these teams actually get through their work? How do they prioritize? How do they assign the right people to it? How do they, pull everything together? And maybe one area just to focus in on here, Sagi, is at that enterprise level, which is so scary. Like I've only worked at that enterprise level like maybe once, and kind of have a fear of it because the volumes, the values, everything is just so much bigger and so much messier. Like, why is it particularly important for these enterprise teams to get intake right?
Yeah, so so now we establish what is intake and we establish what is orchestration. It really comes down to this area of the general process, of the general work of what procurement, for example, considered to be the process for handling. Let's again talk about purchase. It was overlooked, and the entire engagement starts with requisition already filled. But if that requisition is not filled at all because someone doesn't know where to go, so then you have rock spend, right? If filling that requisition is actually very complex and has a bunch of different things and concepts that are obvious for finance, maybe even obvious for legal, but are very foreign for, like, I don't know, a marketing manager that want to purchase something, then you have bad information, or you have a lot of back and forth, or again, people just skip the process altogether.
Yeah.
So all of this thing is basically an upstream part of the process that was not managed at all, or is not being managed at all in most companies. And that's why they need to bring intake. So back to your specific question about enterprise, everything is bigger in enterprise. Everything is more nuanced in enterprise. If mid-market or an SMB has, 7 categories and really sort of like maybe 1 to 2 variations into each category, because, the volume is not high, the complexity is not high, they probably have 1 ERP. That sounds obvious. Yeah. You go enterprise, they have 4 ERPs.
Yeah.
We have customers with 18 ERPs.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And that isn't, this is before talking about M&As of, subsidiaries that are actually, choosing to work on their own and they don't actually fully integrate it into the big process. So there's so many variations and so many complexities. And so a lot of those companies really struggle with the worst of two evils. People either are not following the process, so they have rock spend, spend under management is low, and they're really trying to chase people down. So they have a lot of after the fact POs and a lot of spend that is not accounted for. Or they forced everyone, right? No PO, no pay type of thing. And then the efficiency hurts real bad, where it takes way too long, really becomes a blocker for a lot of the business, especially again when you think about the departments like marketing, departments like they need to move fast, they need an agency ASAP, and the process just breaks down, and so everyone jumps in and do it manually. So when you think about enterprise, the quality of the data, the adoption of the systems, of the process, and then the ability to handle the complexity of it really elevate the need for an orchestration in general, so process orchestration in general, and then intake orchestration, because there's so many different personas and so many different type of engagements that you need to manage that part of the process as its own process, and you need to invest in it on its own to ensure A, you get a high adoption, but also B, the quality of it is high.
Absolutely. And I thought they were really good examples you gave, especially around like marketing sales. Like these teams, there's always a lot of friction between them and procurement when intake, especially intake, is just broken. And then, like you mentioned, forcing people through a certain process that is so poorly designed just adds so many delays to it. Now, Sagi, like I'm trying to get into the shoes of someone in procurement right now. They've heard about process orchestration technology. They're listening to you kind of describe intake orchestration from a procurement person's point of view. How do they think about starting to use this technology? Like, how is it different to say like an all-in-one solution or a best of breed? Like, what's the difference there? Because I know this space of procure tech has got, for a lot of people, for the average procurement person trying to do their job, it's become so overwhelming. So many solutions, so many different options. Like, how are they going to use process orchestration slightly differently to what's kind of come before it?
Yeah, so I would honestly think about it from two different points that are similar but are actually different. First is just the environment and the landscape in which we operate. That all-in-one concept is flawed by itself because it thinks about all-in-one within the procurement and finance teams. If InfoSec needs to be involved, they're not going to be in your all-in-one anyway. So when you think about them from a stakeholders involvement and the complexity that brings, you have to orchestrate in order to truly gain efficiency and compliance. It's just, again, if you're a small companies and you don't actually have an InfoSec team, it's just one person that also does this and this and this and that. You don't need an orchestration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But if you're 1,000 people and up, especially if you're a true enterprise, like 5,000 and up, then you're not. There's not a question of whether you need an orchestration. The question is more of where do you need to start in bringing that orchestration in. So I think the first part is just understanding the complexity of the downstream as well. So this is kind of like what I'm trying to kind of differentiate. That even if the intake is something you're questioning yourself on, the orchestration, I've not seen a single enterprise client or prospect that doesn't have deep issues with how different stakeholders and different systems handle. Because you need to also understand, this is something we haven't touched on. In enterprise companies, there's no one way to run anything. Like an invoice might come later in the process from some suppliers that doesn't want to, go through the normal process, but then it needs to create an entire approval cycle internally as if it came from the beginning. And sometimes, some geographies you want to have a certain policy that is very different than other, locations. All of those complexities needs to be managed somewhere, and they're not only true for the P2P, or they're not only true for the ERP. They need to be across, also the CLM and also the InfoSec ticketing system and also, all the other things. So really extracting that logic out of those systems and make it in a quote unquote higher level, like adding a layer on top of everything, is really what the orchestration platforms are meant to do. Now, that is different than the intake, and this is kind of like where I think some confusion happened in the market, where people just assume it's the same, right?
Yeah, that's happening for sure. From what I'm seeing, yeah.
And those are different capabilities in different depth, right? So you can have intake orchestration that does some of the things we mentioned, but it won't have the depth of true process orchestration, in being able to work with multiple ERPs, in able to do things asynchronously, so things that are not actually started from a human, right? But like stuff that might a process automation kind of capabilities.
Yeah.
So this is one area of it. And then when you think about back to the intake idea, I think the biggest thing that I see procurement teams sort of like go through right now, that transformation in their mindset, is really understanding that while the P2P, right, the downstream process is for you, right, is for the team, is for the procurement team, is for the finance team, is for compliance. The upstream, the intake, is not for you. It's for the end users. And that is a mind shift. And that's something that when you're in revenue, sales, customer facing stuff, it's very clear. You have like the internal processes, and then there's like, the external processes, right? So maybe a salesperson in Salesforce need to fill like a lot of information, right? So you have all the stuff. But when you put a form for a customer, for a lead in your website, everyone knows intuitively that if you have a form with 20 questions or a form with one question, what will be the conversion rate, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very obvious, right? You don't need the data to know that that's just obviously going to be much higher conversion rate. Similarly, when procurement wants to bring purchases into their process, they need to think about from the purchaser's point of view. Like, what is the minimum amount of information I can ask for and when? And this leads me to the important part here, is that this is not only about getting adoption, it's also getting involved earlier, right? But procurement team are always saying, and what I've been hearing a lot is, we want to be more strategic, we want to have a seat in the table, and so on and so forth. Most companies right now that are doing the all-in-one solution, or some of the players that are saying that they're doing intake orchestration, but truly what they're doing is orchestration of approvals, are all focused on the same thing, which is the engagement with procurement starts in the requisition point. So you create a requisition and then you engage with procurement. When I'm talking about intake orchestration, I'm going further back and I'm saying you really should start from intent. You should start as early as a person has an intent to procure something, is when you want to be involved. And so to do that, you really need to treat the pre-requisition world as its own process, as its own, world. And that's something that we pride our approach in as a company. But I think from a point of view perspective, it is an important distinction to begin with. The requisition is where you already know exactly what you want to buy, and then you just
too late.
Some approvals. Exactly, it's way too late.
Yeah. All the leverage, commercial leverage, negotiation, ability to do anything is compromised.
Exactly. And you need all the data at that point, which means that you're essentially telling the requester,
fill out all this, millions.
And basically saying, like, if you don't know it, don't come to me. Come to me only when you have all of this, right?
Yeah.
So this is sort of like the importance there.
Yeah. No, that's a really good breakdown, because there is a lot of confusion in this space, just in general in tech, not just orchestration or intake. I think it was a really good breakdown there. And Sagi, it's like, once again, in the shoes of that procurement person, just for now, we're going to move on to talking about the benefits of others, and you just touched on it, and I really like that. But say I picked up Tonkean today, and I'm like, oh, I've got this new toy, and I'm really excited. Like, how easy is this for someone who's not in IT, who's not a developer? Like, how easy is this to get set up in your organization? And I appreciate it's going to be slight caveats to anything here, but maybe just break that down for me, please.
Yeah. So I think it does start with again, going back to that same concept, that orchestration as a concept sits on top, and intake as a concept, it's a prologue for what you currently have. That helps in many ways, but the biggest way it helps with is the change management, or minimizing change management from that point. So, for example, we have several customers, very big enterprises. I can't share the names of some, but massive financial companies, massive software companies that you all know their names. When they started, immediately their point of view was, oh, let's just go into a scoping project now for a year, because we want to revamp the entire thing. And our approach is, don't. Instead, use the power of such platform to iterate, and to actually bring methodologies that are, if we go to like a half a step for a second to like the product and engineering world, those concepts of iterative agile approach, right, that are different than, in the 90s, it was all about doing it in a, what I call waterfall. So you basically walk, and then like have a big version of something. And this is for years now, a couple decades even, has been moved into a more agile approach that basically trying to say, it doesn't matter how much you plan, you're going to miss things. So it's better to actually start getting value. And I think for procurement, political value is actually extremely important too. So if someone screams and say, this is not a great experience, I'm wasting too much time on this, or if the CFO is yelling like, why there's so many invoices that didn't went, the spend that didn't come from our normal process, then you want to start getting some wins. So what again, an orchestration approach allows you to do versus again the all-in-one, like, change stuff, is that you can isolate it. So you can say, let's start with one team or one org and have them running their purchases through a new version of the process, or one type of purchase, or just sort of like separating the complexity of where do you want to change. So it allows you the flexibility of what's not broken, let's not fix it. Let's only focus on the areas that are being fixed. So for example, if you have a P2P like Coupa or Ariba, and you spend a lot of time setting this up, getting all the categories, getting all the, the commodities and the subsidiaries, and there's a lot of complexity there. I don't want you to touch it. Like, why would you touch it? That's not where your problem is. Your problem is that people don't know what to fill. Your problem is that InfoSec don't want to go there to click approve. Like that's your problem.
It's always InfoSec as well, for sure. Like,
yeah.
Can we just like say on the InfoSec point, because they're like my go-to example for everything, by the way, Sagi. So I'm really happy you're mentioning that. Like, we all know, like, InfoSec just like to Jira, right? They love playing in Jira and places like that. What we're saying is effectively, something like Tonkean, it overlays above that. So that InfoSec team won't have to come into Tonkean or anything like that. They're still playing Jira, where all their work is, the familiarity is there and everything like that. And when you're talking about, setting things up in those problem areas, a simple connection there or in one team maybe to start with could be a really good way to stop that screaming happening internally.
Yeah. Honestly, the easiest way to imagine it is if you would hire a personal assistant for every person in the company to go and cool. like do that annoying thing. So if InfoSec want to work in Jira, let's keep them in Jira and let them, receive their intake, by the way, because they are experiencing intake too. They receive the intake of the InfoSec review into their Jira, but don't just like send and forget. Have that again assistant keep on refreshing the page, seeing if they had any comments, if they what's the status of this, to bring it back to that sort of like main flow that is being orchestrated. And so it's really like understanding the places where each of the functions like to live, but where the data should live in as well. Because if you just dump all the information into the Jira ticket, or if you send the link and you put a link to the Coupa or the Ariba, that's not helpful either. Like, can I synthesize it? And this is where, I'm kind of like, I want to jump, but like, this is where AI is also extremely useful leverage on top of everything we just talked about, because it actually helps conversing with people better. So can I synthesize the essence of this request? So obviously I have some hard, questions like, does this share information with the vendor? Yes or no, right? But then, so I can do that, but then can I automatically maybe risk score this, upfront? Now that doesn't, you can choose to automatically act on it, or you can simply just make it easier for the InfoSec to prioritize. Because again, they have an intake problem too. They get your request. Now they need to prioritize that across the other things that they need to do. So how do you highlight things that are more urgent? How do you highlight things? So this is, again, go back to what orchestration is. It's not an integration problem. This is not like I need to integrate with Jira. That's easy. That's like really is not this is not an issue.
It's not even a problem. Yeah.
Problem.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
course,
That's not the
way,
issue.
of course, like, by the way, some people listening to this might say, well, in my big enterprise, it actually is a problem.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
on-prem
for
and
sure.
stuff, which is true, that's why you need an enterprise grade platform. But that is easy solvable problem. Where it gets more interesting and it has more depth into it is, how do I make the IT team or the InfoSec team prioritize those requests, act on those requests in a way that aligns with my policy without training them for months, without forcing
to come and use this tool, right?
Without going to their boss's boss to make a mandate from the top. Like, how do I make it natural? And I think natural is an important point here, is to align to the way people work. And this is why I started the entire thing with the business process about people. This really, simple but critical and non-trivial concept in which we need to set up our processes and our experiences to fit the people that are using it, and not the data that we need later down the funnel. So many times we're saying, we would need this later, so let's just put it up front.
Ask for what you need at that moment to the bare minimum, right?
And use technology to use AI and other stuff to make it better. Just putting it in the priority, like understanding that it's just not going to happen otherwise. And I think that's the biggest thing that changed in the last few years. Post-pandemic, post-economic challenges. You name it. What you think made it more prevalent, but the reality of it is that procurement teams used to be, not to offend anyone, like the DMV, which means you either fill the form the way I told you to, or
go away.
Your problem. To a point where going away means, well, I'll just find a different way to spend
circumvention, right? Maverick spending, a whole wealth of other problems that you've effectively caused yourself as a procurement team, which is a frustration. Yeah. Sagi, I'm just going to jump straight to it because you have just mentioned it, and I think it's something that people are thinking about and taking seriously, which is AI. So, like, you gave a bit of a use case there, but the wider piece, like, how does AI fit into this process orchestration here? Like, how are these enterprise teams really going to benefit from it? If you share any examples, I know we might be talking about orchestration and intake here. Like, I'm happy for you to approach that however you want.
Yeah, well, I think on the bigger story of AI, putting aside all the whether AI will take over the world conversations, I think I look at it as any advancement in technology. It has things that it's good at, and it has things that it's not a great fit for. And trying to put everything in AI or everything in a chatbot experience is, not the smartest thing. And by the way, you don't need to believe me. Just believe yourself as a consumer. Some things are really, really nice to just chat with something or just ask something in a plain language. And some you actually prefer to have a different visual representation of the things. And I think this is a bigger philosophical, experience question that I'm sure some people would agree with me, some people will disagree with me. That's fine. I think what's important for procurement or specifically for this day and age is really understanding that the biggest thing that LLMs can help with is reducing the need of structured data. And there's so much that we had to, in the past, pre-LLMs. LLMs is large language models, right? It's all the GPT, all the OpenAI, all the ChatGPT things are based on, and that's sort of like the big evolution that happens in the last year and a half is around LLMs, because AI as a thing it's been here for a while. But that big jump, what it really kind of brings to the table is the ability to understand language in a place that we never had before, but also react in language. And this is where the phrase is generative AI comes from. So it generates language, it generates content in a different place. So where this comes in with procurement and intake, even more specifically, first of all, is the understanding of people requests. So one thing we've done early last year, which is extremely successful, and we have several customers that have expanded since to a lot of other use cases too, but saw a lot of success with it, is the AI front door. And the AI front door is really a simple idea. It's like, it even looks like a sort of like a Google interface when you land on it. But it's basically like, ask me, what do you need? Now, this comes back to my point of view of intake really starts with intent. Sometimes an employee doesn't even know, or she or he doesn't even know what processes are even available. So, for example, they might have a question, something like, who need to approve a $5,000 purchase? You would immediately, as a person, say, well, that person has a 5,000 purchase that they're about to do, obviously, right?
Yeah, it's good data to get straight away.
They would never think about clicking on a new purchase request button, because they're not
policy document.
Right, yeah, they're definitely not going to go to the policy document.
Still relied upon by many.
Yeah. But if they have a place to do it, and that place in the Tonkean front door can be in web, can be in Slack, Microsoft Teams, email. But if they can go and ask that simple question of, hey, where do I need to get, who needs to approve a $5,000 thing? Then what the front door does is, A, connects to your policies. So it can just answer, the actual question. Say something like, oh, $5,000, your manager is enough, or whatever. But it can also have context on who you are. So because Tonkean is orchestration layer, it connects to, let's say, Workday. So it knows that you're a VP. The answer might be different if you're a VP.
Yeah.
So instead of replying, if you're a VP, this and this and that, and if you're not, like, it just knows that you're a VP. So it would answer accordingly. But most importantly, I think, is that it moves from a pure information querying into action. Because then it will also say, do you need help purchasing this, or how early are you in the process? So they might say, oh, I'm just looking around. And then do you need help with someone to help you sourcing options? Or if they say, yeah, I'm about to buy, like, okay, do you want help guide you through this? So essentially, come in earlier, but also the ability to actually give that visibility to the initial question for the procurement team. So all of a sudden, you really sort of like create call center internally that is leveraged, because it's using that AI to intercept and interpret questions and concepts that are far from being structured. There's a long way to go before you can actually make them structure, so it can automatically do that. And then, of course, it can take this and pre-fill forms and so on. So this is one area. The next area is really helping with the filling of the information later on. So many times, you get to a point in a sequence that there's a question that you have no idea what this question is. You're literally like, what is this? Can be like, what is your chart of account? And I was like, I don't know. What are you talking about? Or, please provide the provider ESG score. Maybe you don't know what is it that means. So how do I help you without making you sort of like drop off, right? So again, I'm going a lot of concepts here that I'm taking from, revenue and other places, because they're the same way. Revenue, when you sell something, when you have customers, your goal is to convert them, right? And what does convert means? To convert someone to a customer is that you're trying to guide them into a certain place, so they'll make a transaction in a way that you want them to make it. You're not forcing anyone to it. You can't. So you have to actually give them value on the way and really sort of like align with how they think. That's what I'm trying. Those are the concepts I'm trying to bring into internal processes. And so we want people to follow those processes, but we don't want to create bureaucracy. We don't want to create red tape. No one likes to be on the receiving end of it. So the way to approach it is to take those concepts and bring them into those areas. So anyway, back to the AI piece. So that's a big part of it. Right up front, and then during the questions, someone can ask, and then an AI can say, oh, this is how you should feel it. Again, this is where orchestration comes in. That is better than just a chatbot over a PDF, because it then has the context. It knows what you're looking at in the screen. It knows the values you already filled. It knows the value on the background on other data sources that you might not even have access to, but the AI has, or the orchestration platform has, I should say, that can bring into the context of the AI. So this is one thing. Then the second thing is what I kind of alluded for earlier, is later in the funnel, do things like generate, pre-fill RFPs for you, or
Nice.
or generate contracts for you, or generate emails for you when you're trying to kind of like ask someone for a question, a supplier, external supplier, or external party. Same goes to rating and scoring, urgency, scoring, risk, and so on. A lot of those things are much, much, much easier thanks to the LLMs, but also things like getting invoices. One of the biggest use cases that we have with big enterprises, not only in procurement, by the way, also in legal and in HR and other departments, and that might not shock you, but it's the mailroom. Mailroom is a real thing. People send invoices. Suppliers will send invoice to like an actual physical.
Yeah, like paper-based. yeah. Still a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real thing. And so it has got better in the sense of like, you can now have, or that's what everyone has, the person in the mailroom, literally with their phone, will just take a picture and upload it, I don't know, to a Google Drive or a SharePoint or whatever immediately. So you have a PDF of it, but that's all it is. So now you need to kind of do something about it. So an orchestration platform is the example where it's not only an intake thing. So it's not only the intake doesn't only start with a form. It might even start with a new file was uploaded into a Google Drive folder. Now let's extract the information out of it and kick off a process, similar to whether that person actually went to a web form and filled information. So this is again.
So like self-starts that potential, that invoice, that accounts payable process from the extraction of a PDF that someone's just snapped a photo of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice.
Or send an email. That's another big one. Like someone just emailing procurement@company.com and saying like, hey, I need help, procure this thing, or I need help purchasing this thing. I got an invoice, is attached here. Like how often that happens? A lot. Now, what is the current option is, oh, wait a second. What? No, you need a PO for it. Oh, how do I get a PO? Here's a link, good night.
Go all the way back to the start of the process and then go through this process that, I've just blocked you from expediting. Yeah.
Where here it's, if you have something like Tonkean, you can basically connect to that email inbox. It will automatically identify that the request here is for purchasing, but it's already in the stage where it has an invoice. It can automatically extract the things from the invoice if you want. It can guide the person through. It will still reply and say, okay, I can help you with that. Click here, or you can do it completely over email, by the way. But let's say you tell them to click here, and it can kind of pre-fill, upload the attachment already for you, do all the stuff, and basically ask you just review it. And when you click complete, it will behind the scene go and create a PO and attach it and do whatever it is. So this is kind of again the magic of orchestration, the magic feeling of it. Though there's no magic really, it's something you need to define. You asked me earlier though, and I kind of glazed over it because I want to return to it real quick. You said how easy it is to start, and I think starting. So I answered that, but I think the important part of iteration is that how easy it is also to iterate.
Yeah, to make the changes once you've got version 1 going, right?
Exactly, and so and this has become pretty common, but I think depth is also an important part here. Is the no-code aspect of it, right? And so that's another buzzword that
absolutely
that became a buzzword really, but plays an important role here because what it actually, if you look at beyond the buzzword, no code, yes code, it doesn't matter. What's matter is who owns it, and what no code as a concept allows you to say is that the process owner is not a technical person, owns the logic, owns the experience, versus the process owner owns the definition or the policy that then needs to have consulting or professional services or IT to actually then go and build it. And in many ways, administrating even a P2P system, which is technically a no-code system, doesn't actually allows you the flexibility to change the experience, add the question here, add the question there, because again, it is built for the data, and you want the data to be solid. You want it to be so. Like, there's a lot of risk in changing those. When you separate the layers, when you had something like Tonkean and it's a 100% no code, it allows you to iterate on some of the things, even in a matter of, you know what, I don't want this field to be required anymore, or you know what, I want to try to fill it out through through a NetSuite or something, and suggest options there. And all of this doesn't touch the later data, right? But it allows you to kind of iterate quickly. So the no code is a big piece of it. But I think something we've done very differently than anyone else, and I think that comes with our 9+ year of existence, is that we went all in on the aspect. Every single thing in the solution that you get with Tonkean for procurement, there's a standard solution. You get it out of the box, that exists. But after you got it and you got it live, every single piece of it you can change, 100% of it. And that, again, maybe is not very interesting for SMB, but it's a must-have for an enterprise. And that is a big reason that we've had success in the enterprise, is the depth of how much you can change, which is essentially everything. There's not a single thing that is actually hard coded. It's all building blocks that you can build whatever you want, and it's exciting to see the type of use cases that customers end up with, that are much wider than intake orchestration, and that's kind of where it goes back to the process orchestration generically.
Yeah, it is a really good point, Sagi. I'm glad you came back to it, because I do a lot of thinking about this, and being able to build really good processes for your organization is I think it's a must-have skill set for procurement if you actually want to stay relevant in the role. And also, I know we've not really touched on it, the legal aspect as well. Same for in-house counsel, right? Like, it's really big legal ops. There's a whole, a lot of synergy there. So, absolutely. Sagi, I'm really conscious of time, but there's just one question I really wanted to ask you, okay? And I'm going to change the question slightly to what I've got here, but like, say someone's in the market and they're looking at process orchestration, they're excited by it. Like, I don't know, what's your top 3 that should be on like your process orchestration, your intake shopping list?
If I have to choose 3, I would, maybe not in that order, but like, they're all 3 of them are equally important. So the first would be the AI front door concept. I would generalize it into people first experience, AI powered kind of thing. So, basically the ability to really truly make the experience personalized versus, prettier forms. It's very easy to say, oh my God, we are still on Oracle, on-prem, and the experience is very like 90s. And I saw a demo of a forms that are pretty. And so I want to just add the prettier forms. That is going to change. By the way, I'm not saying that it's not important. That actually will improve your adoption, but it's not going to solve your core problems. Definitely not. Definitely not in the midterm, even not to mention long term. So first thing would be that. The second thing would be really the true point where orchestration comes to life is integrations and automation. So how deep is your ability to automate things? Because integration are much easier than they used to be, and so. I think integrations is really truly the table stake in this world. But integration for out of the box SaaS versions, sort of like Happy Path, are not what orchestration is about. Orchestration is the ability to work with unstructured data, work with any number of systems and homegrown solutions, because your InfoSec example might use Jira, or they might use their own weird.
Yeah, something they've built, right? Some wild thing. And then the mailroom example, right, that you gave as well is, I think that's a really good one for a lot of procurement people, just to sort of get their heads around, the technology here.
Yeah. And then the automation part is in the same bucket with me. So the integrating is one thing, but what can you do with this data? Like, what can you do with it? Can you
get the so what of it?
Yeah, exactly. Can so many cases you be like, let's say like add supplier, right? So adding a supplier, in a simple environment might just be literally one action that you need to do on a P2P. In a complex, more realistic situation, you actually need to go and add it in this system first, enrich it with that data from that system, and then put it in 3 different systems, and wait for one of them to finish in order, so like the
linear fashion, right, of it there is a blocker, right?
Exactly. And so there's so the automation depth. So I would say, again, integration and automation depth would be the second one. And then the third one, again, you mentioned it's table stake, but I would elevate it from not only no code, but how dynamic and flexible is the solution. I had a call with a customer the other week, and they had a lot of different processes on Tonkean. They've been with us for many years, and that person mentioned that they onboarded a new system for a specific process, unrelated to Tonkean, but for her same team, from a different thing. I think some some off the shelf type of thing, and she was mentioning like this was it was cool. You had like it was a kind of good starting, like the get started part was very fast with that kind of like out of the box tool, but like within the second day we're like, wait, what? I can't change that. Wait, what about this? I cannot change that. You kind of like, she's like, I got so used to the fact that, with Tonkean, you can literally change anything. The freedom, was missing and starting to become a blocker for them on this other thing. So I think there's a time and place for sort of like package solutions, but I think the complexity of the world continues to go there. But definitely when you go up market, you have to have the depth of the ability to change things. So I think when you're an enterprise or a big mid-market company, it's a no-brainer to me that you need, that part as well. So I think, but it's less critical for an SMB. The first two, though, I do think that they're important, and that is the order that I came up with. Is that the experience is true for everyone, even if you're a 10 people company or you're a 10,000 people company. That is true. The second thing with the automation and integration, I think if you are a 50 people company, you already have too many steps that are redundant to do manual, and you want that to be able to automate it. And then the last one with the flexibility, really start to ring true when you have a few hundred people and your environment is probably a spaghetti of multiple things. And that's where you actually want the ability to have full control of it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, by the way, you answering that very arbitrary question. I just kind of wanted to put you somewhat on the spot. I think that was super helpful. But Sagi, I just want to say thank you. Like, it's been eye-opening. I've been following orchestration and intake as two separate and also conjoined solutions for a while now. I've seen what Tonkean have been up to sort of before you were going into sort of procurement and legal as well, like when you were just like business ops as well. So really excited to see you focus in on these areas because they need all the help they can get, to be honest. So yeah, thanks for coming on and chatting with me today.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. That was a great convo.